I want to start to answer some of your questions. I think most of you filled out a questionnaire. Hopefully, if you didn't, you send it in. And at the end, I have what are your burning questions and also case studies, which I want to use as guides. And I want to do some videos to answer them because I think everybody can learn from everybody else's kind of questions. So hopefully I'll get to everybody. So I'm going to start with a question I've been asked by a couple different people, and that is how many carbohydrates should you eat a day when you have PCOS? You are going to get next week in Module 4 this handout that kind of talks about that, but I want to kind of talk you through it. I think the first thing I would say is you don't have to count carbohydrates. That makes some women very anxious, and I don't know that you need to do that. It can be kind of restrictive, but I know some women like to do it, so I am going to talk about it. So I think for most of you, if you just think more about eating like a healthy plate of food, a balanced plate, and thinking about having half the plate with vegetables, a quarter with carbohydrate, and then a quarter with your protein, and then some fat. So I think that's the easiest way to do it, but I know some of you actually may want to count grams because you like to do it, and that's cool too. So it's hard to answer that question because it's a really individual answer. You know, it's really going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on your degree of insulin resistance, and you may or may not know that. I think most women with PCOS have some insulin resistance. Some women are very insulin resistant, where others are mildly insulin resistant. So who would be very insulin resistant? That would be when you had your fasting insulin levels checked, they were very high. Perhaps if you're quite overweight, if you had a glucose tolerance test with insulin levels and they were very high. Again, if you're overweight and you store a lot of your body fat in your abdominal area, if you have type 2 diabetes or a family history of it, that's my guess that you're on the higher insulin resistant side, where somebody else might be just a little overweight, or maybe their fasting insulin level was normal, but you store some of your body fat in your abdominal area and you have a hard time losing weight. You might be mildly insulin resistant. And then you might have another woman who is very lean, maybe has totally normal insulin levels. Maybe you had the glucose tolerance test done with insulin, it was normal. You might be a little insulin resistant, but not much. So we have three different really types of, I guess, PCOS, we could say. So if you're very insulin resistant, I would definitely say to keep your carbs on the lower end. If you wanted to know a number, again, I don't like to give numbers, but I will, I would probably keep it to be around maybe 15 grams per meal, maybe 30 grams per meal. Now, there are some women, not many, who actually like to do keto or who like to go very, very low carb. I don't think that works for the majority of women, but it does for some women. So if you feel good having some meals where you have almost no carbs. Now, I'm not counting vegetables as carbs. I kind of give you a pass on non-starchy vegetables. So you could definitely have some meals when you have almost no added carbohydrates, but just from the vegetables, so you have some protein, fat, and a little bit of carbs. But I think for the majority of women, if you're doing the balanced plate thing, I think that's a better way to look at it. So I guess what I would say is if you're mildly insulin resistant, you could do like 40 grams of carbs per meal. If you're moderately insulin resistant, maybe 30 grams per meal, or if you're very, very insulin resistant, maybe have no carbs at some meals, or 15 grams, so keep it low. So some of you don't want to count grams. And again, if you don't want to do this whole carbohydrate counting thing, don't even listen to me right now because I don't want to stress you out. Another way to do it is percentages of calories. And I would say for an average woman who is very kind of mildly insulin resistant, maybe 40% of your calories would come from carbs. If you're very insulin resistant, I would do maybe 30%. If you're very, very, very insulin resistant and you like going really low carb, you could do like maybe 15% of your calories from carbs. So that's the whole kind of numbers thing. But be careful because there are some women who maybe are lean or very active who shouldn't be really restricting carbs that much, because if you do, it could make your PCOS worse. For example, if you have more of the adrenal type of PCOS, where your testosterone is normal, but you have very high DHEAS, and if you cut your carbs too low, it could actually make your PCOS worse. So again, I think the best way for most women to use that plate method, which I'm going to talk about in Module 5, and to choose healthy types of carbohydrates. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope that answered that. All right, so I'll move on to another question. So somebody else had said that she has a very serious sweet tooth, and she's trying not to really eat any sugar, and she craves chocolate and baked goods all the time. She doesn't keep them in the house for that reason. I totally get you, because if I keep chocolate in my apartment, I'm gonna like go to town on it. There's no such thing as one chocolate. So yeah, so she tries not to keep sweet stuff around, but all bets are off when she visits her parents, whose house is full of junk food. That's hard. I sympathize with you on that. That used to happen to my family a long time ago. That's a tough one, you know. First of all, I think it's good if you have trouble with portion control of certain kinds of things like sweets or whatever, it's probably good not to keep it in the house. If you have family members who need it, you know, a couple of things you could do. You could try to buy different, you know, a flavor. Let's say it's ice cream of something that you don't like, or a kind of cookie that you don't like that maybe your significant other likes or your kids like. So try to have stuff that doesn't really turn you on that much. Or at least try to hide it, keep it a plain view, or buy things that are portion controlled. So at least if you have it, it's a small portion. And then make sure you're having healthy snacks in the house for you, so you'll have something for you while they're all eating the ice cream. But when you go to your parents' house, I guess my first question would be is how often do you go to your parents' house? If it's like every weekend, that definitely is a problem. But if it's not that often, you could bring your own healthy snack when you go. It depends, I guess, what your relationship is with your parents. You can maybe ask them if they kept the cake out of sight, or if they could hide the stuff or not have it there when you come. But I think the best bet might be to bring your own snack when you go there. Maybe you could enlist the support of your significant other, or your husband, or whoever, and just say, can you help me out, you know, so I don't get into it, into all the sweets at my family's house. But maybe try and enlist some support there. So basically with the family's house, I think it comes down to talking to your parents, see if they could at least hide it or not have it all around. Bring your own healthy snack, enlist the support of a significant other, or maybe you could bring some kind of like a healthy dessert or something, so at least maybe they could have that instead of getting into whatever they have in the house. But that's a tough one. You definitely need to come up with a plan on that one.